Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Now, we always say love is complicated, but today's story, well, let's just say this one's less The Notebook and a little more Jerry Springer. Get ready for some family drama, blurred lines, and a lot of what were they thinking moments.
Buckle up. It's a wild one.
So where do we even start with this? Our source material is a YouTube video, and the channel is called Emotional Concern Group. It features a woman named Elby sharing her, well, unconventional family story,
That's one way to put it.
to say the least.
Yeah.
Okay, so the basics. Elby grew up in Hong Kong.
Right. With her mother.
Just the two of them.
Yep. Her dad was out of the picture. Long prison sentence for drug dealing. So it was just Elby and her mom in a tiny, one-bedroom apartment.
Okay, so red flag number one right there. Not exactly the ideal environment for a, stable childhood.
And it gets a lot more complicated.
Oh, I bet it does. So what happened? What made this family dynamic so, quote-unquote, unconventional?
Well, Elby's mom had a string of boyfriends. And she wasn't exactly discreet about it.
Wait, what do you mean not discreet?
I mean, Elby was very aware of her mom's, let's call it an active dating life, from a very young age.
In a one-bedroom apartment.
You got it. Elby talks about hearing things, seeing things.
Hold on, she actually saw things.
Oh, yeah. Elby even describes an incident where her mom tried to explain away some compromising noises, let's say,
Compromising how?
by telling young Elby that it was just a massage.
A massage. Seriously, come on.
That's what I said.
Okay, that's next level denial.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what that must have been like for Elby, growing up in that environment.
It definitely left its mark. Elby talks about feeling a mix of curiosity, shame, and resentment, all at the same time.
So she's being exposed to these adult situations way too young to process any of it.
Right, and it's like she's trying to make sense of it all, but there's no healthy outlet for her to, to explore these feelings or ask questions.
And how could there be in that environment? I mean, her mom's telling her it's a massage, for crying out loud.
Exactly. It's like a complete disregard for boundaries. And it gets even more, well, let's just say interesting when we get to the turning point in Elby's story. She describes accidentally walking in on her mother and a boyfriend. And this experience seems to be what really triggered Elby's own exploration of sexuality.
Oh, wow. So not only was she exposed to all this adult stuff, but then this incident happens.
Right, and she's left to figure things out on her own.
In a one-bedroom apartment, no less?
Yep. Talk about a lack of privacy.
It's just mind-boggling. I can't even fathom it. So was this boyfriend, was he like a long-term thing?
Not particularly. He was just one in a long line of visitors, let's call them. But then comes the real game changer in Elby's story.
The boyfriend who wasn't just a visitor.
Exactly. This one was different. Elby describes him as more engaging, more handsome than the others. And importantly, he actually talked to her.
Oh, so he was like paying attention to her. And how did her mom feel about that?
Well, we don't really get into the mom's feelings about it, but what we do know is that this is where things take a truly shocking turn.
Oh boy, I have a feeling I know where this is going.
You.
I mean, given the title of the deep dive today, is it what I think it is? Did she end up,
She did.
wow, so Elby ends up having sex with her mother's boyfriend while her mom was at work. I mean, I'm speechless. Where do we even go from here?
Well, first let's unpack this a little bit, because what's really fascinating is that Elby doesn't frame this as being in love with the guy.
Okay, so then what was it about? Was it just teenage rebellion? Or maybe she was trying to get back at her mom?
It's definitely complex. Elby talks about curiosity, opportunity, and even a sense of revenge towards her mother. Like she was trying to reclaim some power.
Power that she was robbed of in that environment.
Exactly.
So basically, she's playing a very high-stakes game of emotional chess with her mother.
You could say that. And it really highlights how deeply Elby's childhood experiences, particularly her mother's behavior, shaped her actions and her emotional responses. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, folks.
Oh, I bet. So there's more to the story.
Much more.
Yeah.
And it just keeps getting more and more complicated. But we'll save that for after the break.
All right, so we've got this incredibly tangled web of family drama and boundary violations. And then, bam, Elby throws this bombshell into the mix. It's almost like she was, I don't know, trying to level the playing field in this really messed up way.
Right. It's like she was saying, you want to play dirty, two can play that game, but obviously this isn't a game, and the stakes are incredibly high.
Absolutely. So where does this leave Elby now? What's her life like these days?
Well, fast forward to today, Elby has moved out, has a boyfriend of her own.
So she's out of that toxic environment.
Yep. And get this, she's even thinking about marriage.
Wow, so she's really trying to build a stable life for herself.
It seems that way, but of course there's a catch.
Oh, I knew there had to be. What is it?
She's completely estranged from her mother and is struggling with a ton of guilt.
That makes sense, given everything that's happened.
Right, and she really wants to reconcile with her mom, but doesn't know how.
So she's carrying all this baggage from the past, even though she's physically escaped that environment.
Exactly. And that's what she brings to the emotional concern group hosts. Like, what does she do? Should she confess everything to her mom? Will that fix things?
That's a tough one. I mean, on the one hand, honesty is usually the best policy,
Right,
but on the other hand, this is a pretty huge secret
right.
and could do more harm than good.
The YouTube hosts actually give some pretty good advice. They suggest that before dropping a truth bomb, LB needs to focus on rebuilding a relationship with her mother.
Okay, so baby steps first. Start with just, regular communication, maybe some shared experiences. Dip their toes back into the relationship pool.
Exactly, like relearning how to be a daughter.
And maybe helping her mother learn how to be a better parent, too.
That's a great point, because let's be real, both of them are carrying a lot of baggage from the past.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not just about LB healing. It's about recognizing that her mother might have her own issues that contributed to this whole messed up dynamic.
Right, and if you try to force a confession before addressing those underlying issues, it could just blow up in their faces.
So what you're saying is build a foundation first,
Yeah.
before you can even think about decorating the house.
Effect analogy.
But I gotta ask, is it realistic to think LB can just sweep this massive secret under the rug? Like, wouldn't it always be there, threatening to destroy everything?
That's definitely a valid concern. And there's no guarantee that ignoring the past will fix everything. LB might need professional help to work through all this, no matter what she decides to do about her mother.
Therapy for LB on her own, and maybe even couples therapy with her mom.
Exactly. It's about unpacking all that baggage and developing healthy ways to cope with it.
Okay, so let's say LB does decide to confess. What kind of fallout could we expect? Because this isn't just forgetting to call on her birthday,
No, it's not. It's a huge betrayal.
Oh, yeah.
And it could have major consequences.
Her mom could feel totally betrayed, angry even.
Exactly. And there's a good chance she would blame LB, deny any responsibility, or even lash out.
And what about the boyfriend in all this?
No.
Does LB have any feelings for him? Or was he just a pawn in this whole mess?
Good question. Thankfully, LB explicitly says she doesn't love him and hasn't had any contact with him since the relationship with her mother ended.
So it really was all about her mom. He was just a way for her to act out, to maybe feel some sense of control.
Precisely. It wasn't about romance or genuine connection. It was about finding an outlet for all that pain and anger in a family dynamic that was completely out of whack.
It's heartbreaking to think about how deeply this affected her.
It really is. And it raises a bigger question. How common are situations like this? We hear these crazy stories, but I wonder how many people out there are dealing with similar family dynamics.
Right. It makes you think about the ripple effects of how we're raised
Yeah,
and how those early experiences shape our choices later on.
absolutely. And it brings us back to something we talk about a lot on the show, the importance of open communication in families, especially when it comes to sensitive topics like this.
Yeah. Creating a safe space where everyone feels comfortable sharing their feelings, it can make all the difference.
So true. And it's never too late to start having those conversations.
So even though LB's story is pretty extreme, it's a good reminder that we can all benefit from being more open and honest with our families, and that it's never too late to try and build those healthier relationships.
Absolutely. It's about breaking those cycles of dysfunction and creating a more positive environment for ourselves and for future generations.
Now, that's a message of hope we can all get behind. Even in the midst of all this chaos, there's always potential for healing and growth.
So circling back to LB's dilemma, what advice would you give her, knowing everything we know about her situation?
Well, I'm no therapist, but I think I'd echo the advice from the YouTube hosts. Focus on building a genuine connection with her mother first. Really listen to her, show empathy, try to see things from her perspective.
Great advice. Rebuilding that foundation of trust and understanding is crucial.
And maybe then, down the line, if it feels right, she can consider sharing her secret. But it's important to remember that sharing the secret shouldn't be the goal.
Right. The goal should be a healthy, loving relationship, regardless of whether the secret ever comes out.
So it's more about healing and less about confession.
Mm.
But ultimately, it's LB's choice to make. She has to weigh the potential consequences and do what feels right for her.
Exactly. It's her journey, and she needs to choose the path that feels most authentic for her.
It's easy to get caught up in the, like, whoa, that's crazy aspect of LB's story.
Right, right.
But what really struck me is how much it reflects some, universal truths about family dynamics.
Oh, absolutely. It's a case study in how the past can really, like, follow you.
Yeah.
Albie's childhood, with the lack of boundaries and her mom's choices, it clearly shaped her own decisions.
Even if those decisions were, well,
Questionable.
to say the least.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, right? Like, what if LB had grown up in a different environment with healthy boundaries and, open communication?
Would she have made those same choices?
Exactly. It's like the nature versus nurture debate.
Playing out in this really, really dramatic way.
For sure. And we can't know for sure,
But
but
it definitely makes you think.
about those ripple effects, yeah.
Mhm.
And speaking of ripple effects, I'm curious about how this might impact LB's future relationships.
Oh,
I
interesting.
mean, she's considering marriage now. So how does someone move past such a tumultuous past and build something healthy?
That's where the real work comes in, I think. Recognizing those patterns
Yeah.
and making a conscious effort to break them.
Yeah.
Therapy, like we talked about, can be so helpful for that.
So it's not about forgetting, it's about understanding.
Right. Understanding how it affected her and then making a conscious choice to choose differently.
To choose a different path
Exactly. It's about self-awareness,
and actively building something new, something better.
based on trust and respect.
Healthy boundaries, all those things we talk about.
Which brings us back to that advice from the YouTube hosts.
Rebuilding that connection with her mother.
But doing it in a way that prioritizes her own well-being, too.
Right. It's not about condoning the past, but recognizing that healing can happen.
Even in the most, complicated relationship.
Totally. Sometimes you got to rebuild the foundation before you can decorate, right?
Yeah, I love that.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into LB's unique family dynamic,
Unique is a good word for it.
what's the takeaway for our listeners today?
I think it's a reminder that everyone has a story. And those stories are shaped by so many things: experiences, choices, circumstances.
And even the most unconventional stories, they can teach us something, right?
Absolutely. LB's story might be extreme,
Yeah.
but it highlights how much we all need connection.
Love, understanding.
Families can be messy, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But there's always hope for healing.
Even amidst the pain.
And it's the secrets.
So well said. And on that note, we encourage you all to reflect on your own family experiences. Think about how communication, boundaries, how those things shape your relationships.
And remember, even in the most complicated situations, there's always hope for a deeper connection.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.